By now you've probably seen the headlines regarding the NAR commission settlement. You might be considering both the pros and the cons of a seller offering a buyer commission. But before we jump into that, make sure you hit subscribe below to stay on top of all of the latest Huntsville, Alabama real estate news. So with the proposed settlement, which has not yet been approved, basically one of the main ingredients of this is that buyer compensation, which was hosted in the MLS, is now going to have to be housed outside and advertised outside the MLS. Could be on brokers' websites, but that buyer compensation will not be advertised as it has been in the MLS. So with that being housed outside the MLS and all the rule changes associated with this settlement, you might be asking, how many sellers are actually going to be offering a buyer broker commission? Well, we have a little bit of an insight into this with the Northwest MLS experiment. They ran this between 2019, October 2019, and March of 2022. So for about 2.5 years. And from this experiment, they found two things. Number one is 99.3% of sellers still offered a buyer broker commission, even when they did not have to offer that through their MLS. And then number two is 94.5%, about 19 out of 20 sellers, still offered a co-op commission that was above 2% commission to that buyer broker. So let's first look at the cons. The big con is going to be in the investment level for a seller. It is a big investment to offer a buyer broker commission to a buying agent. One of the concerns that some agents or some sellers may have is that a lot of agents here locally and really across the nation, Huntsville is not unique in this scenario, a lot of agents don't simply have a lot of experience and may not be worth the amount of compensation that you're offering. So I pulled recently some stats from our local board. I found that about 46%, over 2,300 of our local agents out of over 5,000 local agents sold between 0 to 1 homes in the last 12 months. And so the question is buyer compensation worth that for somebody that's only sold 0 to 1 homes in the last 12 months? So let's now jump into the pros. So let's think about it from a hypothetical conversation with a seller. So a seller saying, I really don't want to offer buyer compensation. I want to net more money on the sale of my home. And so the conversation might go like this. Mr. Seller or Mrs. Seller says, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Agent, I don't want to pay compensation for the sale of my home. And the agent says, okay, I understand. So let's look at the costs associated with selling your home and showing your home. How much do you want to pay for an open house? Well, I don't want to pay for that. Well, how much do you want to pay for this agent bringing in a buyer for your home? Well, I don't want to pay for that. Well, how much do you want to pay for them to write an offer and all these different details? The seller might say, I don't want to pay for any of those things. And then the agent would be like, well, what if I came up with this idea where we only pay for the agent that's successful in bringing a buyer to purchase your home? And the seller might say, that sounds great. And that's actually the system that we've had. Most sellers don't want to just pay kind of a la carte towards agents doing open houses and showing homes and all those kind of details, writing offers and inspections. And so the commission model really works well for these sellers because you don't have to pay unless that agent is successful in bringing you a buyer. And so everybody wins in that scenario. So as a seller, and I am a seller oftentimes because I buy and sell a lot of real estate, I want to receive offers from every buyer regardless of who their agent is. Even going back to that con, even if they've sold 0 to 1 homes in the last 12 months, brand new agent, have hardly any experience at all, I want every potential buyer coming to my properties because I want to get the most money possible for my home and I want to sell in the shortest amount of time possible. And the best way to do that is by increasing the exposure to every possible buyer agent that's out there. Because the listing agent's job, their job is really to market the property, to help price it properly, and to give you advice on what's next. The home's not selling, what do you need to do in terms of marketing or pricing or updating the home. So their job is to kind of advise you during the process. But if it turns into that other layer of buying, a couple things happen. Number one is you can really limit that buyer pool. And you could also end up paying the agent still to do both. So you might end up paying the same amount or something very similar to it, but then limiting the amount of buyer pool that's only associated with that agent or that company. So that's probably not in your best interest for most sellers. And then the second thing is if you limit the buyer pool that can afford to pay their agent, then you're also going to really limit the number of potential buyers that are out there as well. Again, as a seller, I want to cast the widest net possible. I want to be able to attract buyers that can't afford to pay their agent. I want to attract buyers that come from the brokerage that I'm working with. I want to attract the buyers that are coming from other brokerages as well, so I can reap the most money for the sale of my home. So another pro of offering a buyer agent compensation is potentially a faster sale, not only getting a higher price, but a faster sale. Increased exposure, more showings typically lead to that faster sale, could create a bidding war, multiple offers, could also mean the difference between selling and not selling as well. And realistically, when you're marketing your home, days on market works against you. So the longer of a home sits on the market, and that's really all market specific. It used to be, if a home sat on the market for a year, you'd wonder what's wrong with it. Now in today's market, sometimes you get to 30 days and you wonder what's wrong with it, just depending on the price point that the home is in. But the longer that home sits, typically the less price you're going to get as well. And by getting more showings, a quicker offer, that's going to also help you with netting the most price. So in closing, there's currently some sellers that do what's called FSBO, for sale by owner. Some sell, but many end up hiring a real estate agents. So I think the same scenario is going to happen here with buyer broker compensation. Some sellers will try a 0% buyer agent commission, and some will sell. Some will sell for less, but many, I think, and really most, will end up paying a buyer agent commission. And I think, unfortunately, with this days on market, sometimes that's going to affect them as well, because if they offer buyer broker commission a little bit too late and the days on market has racked up, that could ultimately result in a lower sales price for that seller as well.